We're in a slightly different venue for this conversation with John Butler. We're in the Bakewell Friends Meeting House of the Quakers. We thought we'd ring the changes, and John, we're going to touch on a topic, believe it or not, that in our 300 plus video conversations to date, I don't think we've actually mentioned at all. So let's see how we get on. We're going to talk about the devil. Now, if you remember in our previous conversation on the topic of sin, I did promise that we would touch on the devil this next time. And I want to just sort of be upfront with you about this and say I don't have an axe to grind, shall we say. I don't have a sort of a fixed position on this. So I want us both to explore it, because the devil's not really in vogue, I think, other than in perhaps a sort of good versus bad Marvel comics, you know, Superman versus the baddies or Batman versus the Joker. And so my opening question, John, is should we take the devil more seriously?
A verse in the Bible. If I'd known we were going to talk about this, I'd have looked it up and got it correct. I've managed to look it up now. It's Matthew 10, which is a chapter that's very often sort of missed out of normal Christian teaching, when Jesus very much calls a spade, and talks about judgment, sheep among the wolves, be on your guard. Talks about brother betraying brother to death, and father his child. Children will turn against their parents and send them to death. All will hate you for your allegiance to me, but the man who holds out to the end will be saved. And then towards the end of this chapter, talking about fear, do not fear those who kill the body, but cannot kill the soul. Fear him rather who is able to destroy both soul and body in hell. Well now, this would seem rather unfashionable in today's approval ratings. The Bible doesn't always use the word devil, as in this case, rather as the one who is able to destroy both soul and body in hell. Also called Satan, and sometimes just referred to as the one able to destroy both soul and body in hell. Well, it seems if we accept the authority of the Bible, we should take it very seriously indeed. Instead of fearing, well, what things do we fear? Global warming, COVID virus, the opposition party getting into control in the next election, wars, etc., the economy, all these common fears which obviously are going to shake the body, shake the outer world, but do they affect the soul? Well, I suggest not, depending on your understanding of the soul. But what might shake the foundations of the soul? What might cast the soul into hell? And what do we mean by hell, anyway?
Well, I think we're touching on, I was going to say thin ice here, in modern cultural and social terms, that these are untouchables, but perhaps not so much thin ice as hot coals.
Yes.
As a sort of practicing evangelical for many years, John, you might be surprised to hear that I can't remember in my 20 plus years in an evangelical church any preacher, pastor or vicar preach on the devil or hell. Honestly, it's all about evangelicals, it's all about salvation. There's no fire and brimstone in my background, let me put it that way.
Well, that's very interesting, Phil. And there wasn't actually, in my upbringing, I had 10 years of compulsory chapel attendance through my school years and scripture lessons. So I'm pretty well educated in the Christian principles I was taught. I'm very familiar with the hymns and the prayers of Church of England. Neither do I remember much about the devil. Strangely enough, I was first, I think, introduced into demons by the school of meditation, when it was some time after I'd been taught to meditate. I used to go down to London to attend weekly groups there. We had, it was called a school of meditation, and we had 3 terms a year. I used to attend a group once a week where we were introduced to ever deeper aspects of the teaching from which meditation came. And at one point, when we were considering aspects of the mind, we were introduced to divine and demonic as 2 aspects of the mind. And then gradually came to realize, no doubt we were told, but of course it's one thing to be told. Then the way the school worked, we were introduced to a practice and then told to put the advice into practice, which then became something we actually could experience. And of course the demonic aspects of the mind are those associated with me. I, me and mine. In other words, the part that creates separate existence. Separate existence in contrast to being present. Just being present in the silence. When I and me and mine can subside. Well, that was my first introduction, I think, to a sort of serious consideration of what the devil might be, because of course the demons are as it were, the servants of the devil. I don't think I ever remember being told specifically that the devil is me, but it doesn't take long to put 2 and 2 together. Does that throw my soul into hell? Well, just consider how. Those of us that have had, if you think back on the most hellish periods of your life, I think we'll find that they're associated with a predominance of me, either self-pity plus, poor me, poor, hard done, misunderstood, misjudged me, nobody loves me, nobody appreciates all the work I do, all this sort of thing. Yes, me, who is not guilty. let him that is without sin among you cast the first stone. This is another famous saying of Jesus. And this is where those that are not too serious about meditation often fall away, because sooner or later we have to face this position if you're serious about saving the soul.
Didn't you find it rather disconcerting, to say the least, to be sort of have your nose rubbed in the idea that there are demons interested in your thoughts?
It was a gradual. It's all many years ago, and I think it was a fairly gradual dawning. And I'm sure probably if people are going to listen to this video, I don't suppose it's going to change people's lives overnight, but it might just plant a seed in their mind. They might just think, oh, good heavens, never thought of that before. A sort of, yes, may just make people, gosh. But the way of meditation is nothing if not a very gradual opening up or realization, which most certainly takes many, many years to realize ever more fully the human situation.
What I want to come on to in relationship to the devil, it's also the case that the devil does not make any appearance in the Bible until the book of Job. You might want to recall what that story of Job was in a nutshell.
Well, Job was a righteous man, and a prosperous one, with a family and large property, admired by all. And the story is that the devil went to God and said, let me tempt him. So God said, okay. So Job was smitten by a dreadful disease, sores all over his body. And one after another, misfortune befell him. He was attacked by his enemies, all his animals, his flocks and herds were destroyed. He lost his children, lost everything. He was just a miserable old man sitting by the fire, in the ashes of his fire. But he didn't lose his faith in God. His friends came to console him, but it didn't work. He kept his faith in God. Everything was restored, and he was even more prosperous and had more daughters. I remember his second lot of daughters were the fairest in the land. So who was this character, the devil, who approached God and asked permission to tempt him? It's very instructive, really, that we get so little specific knowledge about the Bible, about the devil. Later on, I think, or is it maybe in the book of Job, I forget, Job, the devil is mentioned as a fallen angel, a higher being, who I suppose you might say that Adam was an angel to begin with. Maybe it is Adam, I don't know. These things aren't clearly explained. But you see, if we draw a lesson from the fact that the devil isn't clearly explained, at other points in the Bible there are many references to the powers of darkness. If God is light, what is darkness? Now, sitting there opposite me, I look at your face, and because there are some lights there, there's a shadow cast on the wall. Now, what's that shadow? I suppose I've got a shadow too somewhere behind me. Light and darkness. The powers of darkness. See, one feature about darkness is that we can't see. We don't know, do we? So it's always a bit scary, and you can't explain it really very well, can you? You can't explain it because you can't see. So who knows what darkness is, really?
Ignorance is sin.
Ignorance is sin, you see. As I said it last week. So the very fact that no one can explain the devil is in a way the proof of what it is. Or rather isn't, but but nevertheless think of the power of darkness. It's the power of ignorance that gives rise to education, for better or worse, isn't it?
Oh, red rag to a bull there, John. Some of us think education is our salvation.
Well, you see, this is one of the features of the devil. It's proud, you see. The devil thinks it knows.
Touché.
Going back to the story of Adam and Eve, you see, again, I think we're both of us a bit wobbly on quoting from the Bible, but I think after he ate the apple, is there something about his eyes were opened or something? You see, and the tree that God told him not to eat was the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. In other words, duality. Don't go there, don't go down that road, he was told, or you'll be in trouble. But he did go down that road. And that's where it all started from, wasn't it?
Well, indeed, if that's where duality kicked in, shall we say, before then there was one, there was unity. Let's call it unitive consciousness between Adam and God, whatever that means. But he hadn't fallen. He hadn't. His eyes hadn't been opened, and he hadn't separated himself from the teaching of non-duality. How can there be darkness and light at the same time in the nature of things? This is a sort of a paradox to me, a conundrum. If I can put it this way, John, think of it what you will. If we take the devil too seriously, if we personify the devil, surely that makes a duality out of the unity of God, and the devil can only be existent under the umbrella, shall we say, of the oneness of God. I genuinely can't figure out how that separation works out, particularly in relation to, shall we say, personal devil or personal demons. It's not something, it skids off me, this idea.
Well, as far as I know, in all faiths, it's explained by what's called the Trinity. In Christianity, is the Trinity, you see, or the law of three. I always come back in all these difficult questions, I come back to being present here and now. Because when I do this, I become aware of, first of all, silence. Silence sort of expanding into stillness and space. The space in this room, for example, which is holding Phil and me in this unchanging space. And this conversation's going on without disturbing this ever-present, undisturbed stillness. Presence, the presence. Now all this interaction of ideas, of interaction between us having a talk together, is taking place within this undivided context. So there. That's how it is. And if we sort of want to personify as it were, the two bits of duality, light and darkness. Agree, don't agree. I think this, you think that. And further subdivisions ad infinitum. But for those that, at times when, for example, through persistent practice of meditation, we manage to let go, so that there's nothing else but the undivided one, then all these questions, they just, as it were, disappear.
Does this letting go include letting go of the idea of the devil, or are we still in its sway? We might have the good intention of letting go and not allowing the darkness to overcome the light, but does the shadow remain, or are we forever under the curse of the shadow, John?
This is speaking from the mind, and the mind is a layer of consciousness, as I often describe as the clouds of the mind, with these sort of questions, and you go on forever. But what happens when we get in an aeroplane through the clouds up into the upper sky? Now, if you take that upper sky as an analogy of the undivided one, it's simply beyond the mind. The mind is transcended, if you like. And this is really what meditation does. Because it doesn't sort out the questions of the mind. In a sense, what for? The clouds are clouds. You go beyond it and discover this realm of undivided one.
It's interesting on this note that, as I understand it, the Hebrew word Satan, which does come earlier in the Old Testament than the devil, means, as I understand it, adversary, almost like sort of the counsel for the prosecution. And so in Job, God gives permission to the devil to be the adversary of Job, to test him, in other words, a tester, which seems to me quite a different, shall we say, role of the devil. He caused Job to lose all his flocks, all his daughters, and his physical state, but it was, as you said, reconstituted more than before. So the power that the devil had was always subject to God's bookends of what was allowable. And I find this interesting and comforting, I have to say. In other words, the devil cannot tempt or test or be the adversary greater than that which God allows, and is certainly not this character who can cast you into hell. I suppose that's what I've gleaned from this conversation.
Well, I'm sure that's right. Not trust that statement, I am sure that's right, because that's only me, isn't it? All we've got to do is to come back to this presence, undivided, unquestionably undivided. Those that meditate, go there and see it for yourselves. So whatever takes place, devil or not, it takes place within that. It arises because Adam was free to choose, and he chose duality, and so fell to a lower level of consciousness. So who has the power to throw me and you into hell? Me. Of course, we love to always blame the other person, don't we? This is a favourite ploy. But a more mature understanding brings the blame, back to me.
Well, of course, I have my devilish moments. I'm not squeaky clean at all with all my concepts and words and books. But in fact, it might be good to sort of come to a conclusion of this conversation with maybe our own personal. You always speak from experience, so I must speak from mine. And in the not so much these days, I don't dwell on the issue of demons or the devil or hell. Actually, that's the truth. But in my evangelical days, it was very common for at the end of a service in church to pray in groups. We had the healing team. I was in the healing team, and you would, as a matter of course, you would pray for people to be released from evil spirits or demonic spirits. Not exorcism in a dramatic way like that, but I have witnessed, and I still won't deny it, I have witnessed whatever it was that was happening, call on the name of Jesus, and somebody would shake or cry out. Actually, I haven't thought about it for years and years, but it was genuinely a common occurrence for people to fall down, thrash about on the floor, screech in a loud voice. This is in a middle-class church in Sheffield, so I'm not completely ignorant of these things, and I think you've had some experience.
Yes, Phil, I have. Indeed, it happened to me. There was one period in my life when I'd gone through a long period of depression, and had some very frightening experiences, and I had a friend, a Christian friend who practiced this, and he and his wife prayed over me one evening, and that's just what happened to me. I was thrown to the ground, screaming, thrashing around. I felt something monstrous, something so big coming out of me that it tore my throat, tore my mouth. Or it felt as though it was tearing my mouth. It didn't, but that's what it felt like. Did my life change afterwards? Not noticeably. I don't know what it was. But I'm very happy not to know what the devil is, you know. I think this is our safety, that we don't know what it is. Can't explain it. I mean, why do we behave so awfully at times? We do, we try to be good, but St. Paul says it beautifully, doesn't he, in one of his epistles, the good that I do, I don't do, and I would like to try to think good thoughts and I think bad ones. It's just inherent, or it's just taken such deep root in us we can't prevent it. Are we Is this part of a trial? Does God introduce this into human experience in order as a sort of, these things are sent to try us. Maybe it's part of our learning, part of what we have to take on board as a step towards explaining that we cannot save ourselves, you see, which is again part of the pride of the ego, that we can save ourselves.